So we are on First Samuel lesson 5B. So last week we did chapter 16 and 17 for 5A. So I'm just gonna kind of I'm gonna start us off with I was listening to Pete DeLacy standing in for Kay Arthur a little bit. And I listened to him a little bit last week and just a little bit this week. Um I didn't really get to finish it or anything, but he brought up the difference between jealousy and envy, and both of those come into play with Saul. So, jealousy is whenever you are wanting to, you have something or you own something and you are jealous for it, you want to keep it for yourself. And so, whenever God says he is jealous for us, that's actually a good thing, because he wants to keep us to himself. And envy, on the other hand, is whenever you want what somebody else has. And so with Saul, we see both. He wants to keep his kingship, and but he's jealous of what, or not, I'm sorry, envious. He's jealous for his kingship, but he's envious of what David has. And so we see in this lesson, David has the confidence of the people. He has the love of Jonathan. We're going to see a covenant come up. David is brave. We see that the Lord is with him. And we see that the Lord is not with Saul. He's departed Saul and he's with David. Um, so this verse from James, which I thought was like really fitting, Pete brought it up and JD brought it up in his sermon notes. But it says, "Who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show his good behavior, his deeds, and the gentleness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant, and so lie against the truth. This wisdom is not that which comes down from above, but is earthly, natural, and demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder in every evil thing. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peace loving, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial, free of hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace." So I chose this one, and I chose more than what Pete DeLacy or Farag quoted, because I'm always about literary flow, but also it shows um the good behavior of his deeds in the gentleness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant and so lie against the truth. um I say we write this verse down, and flesh it out. The wisdom that is not which comes down from above, but is earthly, natural, and demonic. For while jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder in every evil thing. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peace loving, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits. So that's where you go to the fruit of the Spirit, impartial, free of hypocrisy, and the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Blessed are the peacemakers, those who have made peace with God. Our job is also to help others to make peace with God. So I actually have this verse. I have a notebook, and when something hits me, I'll write it, something like this, down, and I'll flesh it out to where I have a list on what is wisdom from above. It's pure, it's peace loving, it's gentle, it's reasonable, it's full of mercy, good fruits, impartial, free of hypocrisy. Um, so this is a really good one to have. It's a plumb line, um, to help you with things, as far as like when you see something or hear something or you're going through something. okay, what's wisdom from above? What does jealousy do? What does self ambition do? Um, and so this really applies to our lesson with Saul, as we'll see. The other thing is we've been talking about, and we'll see this in our chapters, is the choices Saul has made. We've talked about whenever you precursory read through First Samuel, when you're just reading through the Bible, it's a little confusing because one minute Saul seems pretty good, the next minute he's messing up, the next minute it's not so good. But as we're studying this deeper, there's definitely been just this downward spiral to where it went from it looked good to, yeah, no, there's just nothing good going on here. And we see like Saul making these choices. And so here we are with chapters 18, 19, and 20. We'll see the things that happen here, but he's made these little choices along the way and he hasn't repented. And so we saw where he didn't do what God said with King Agag, or he has all these animals, and Samuel's like, why do I hear the bleating of sheep? And Saul's like, well, I did destroy him. He just never repents, and his wanting Samuel to worship with him was more just to honor Saul and to look good. And so we've been talking about whitewashed tombs. But Genesis 4, 6 through 7 popped up as well. Um, Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry and why is your face gloomy? If you do well, will your face not be cheerful? And if you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door and its desire is for you, but you must master it. So that came to mind whenever I was going through. I don't know if you noticed, whenever in the one chapter it talks about Saul throwing a spear because he was going to pin David to the wall. He thought, I'll pin him to the wall. So he had that thought. And then later on, we have the other, and it's mentioned twice about pinning him to the wall. So this is something that I was like, oh, he's been thinking about this one. Um, so the Genesis 4, um, 6 through 7 came to my mind, where we need to take every thought captive to Christ. So Cain, it was forget because God favored Abel's offering over his. He was jealous. He was mad, or not jealous. He was envious. Sorry, wrong definition. He was envious. And so then, therefore, he was angry. But the problem was he was approaching God his own way, just as we've seen Saul approaching God his own way instead of the way God asks you to approach him. Um, and so that was the crux of the thing. It wasn't that God's just mean and mad and all that kind of stuff. It's that this is the way you approach me, through the blood of Jesus Christ, not through your own way. And so by Abel giving that blood sacrifice, he was keeping that picture, whereas Cain just there, he was not keeping that picture. And just as Saul, God says, don't require obedience. Obedience picture, it's part of our fruits. We follow and obey. He's approaching him his own way. He's like, oh, just, um, but there is a progression to sin, and we really see it with this turning and burning in Saul's mind about pinning David to the wall. There's this progression. Something happens. Um, Either we get jealous, or we get envious, or we get bitter, or we get this, or we get that. And instead of taking our thoughts captive, we run them off, and then so it all starts in our head. So choices. Our choices preclude actions, and our actions So there is a progression. And even James talks about the progression of when something is conceived, and then you get down in your mind, and then it gives birth to sin. So there is a point where it does turn into sin. That so we but different. So number one, temptation does not equal desire. Satan tempts us all the time. So you get weird thoughts in your head or whatever that, and you reject those thoughts. That does not mean that you know that's necessarily you. Um, um, if you do those thoughts, you are come where there's consequences. That's like a whole different ball game. So there are kind of different levels, so to speak. Oh, taught someone that, well, if thought, and it's like, well, yes, we're not supposed to have sinful thoughts, but there's a definite difference between um what happened had as opposed to your actions. That's why we're told to take every thought captive to Christ. So not excusing everything that goes on in your head. You take every thought captive to Christ. It's playground, but it's um there's a here, and we Saul where he does take action. Um, so he didn't take his thoughts captive. Um, so just a couple extra verses there. So 16. Overall, this chapter was about David being anointed as the next king. So we see the Lord has chosen a king among the sons of Jesse. That phrase is going to come up, interestingly enough. We also see that Samuel anointed David, and the spirit of the Lord rushed upon him. The spirit of the Lord left Saul, and David attends Saul. So we saw that the spirit of the Lord left Saul, and an evil spirit of from the Lord terrified him, and they brought in David to play the harp for him to calm him. And so we see David, the he's the guy anointed the next king of Israel, yet we see his humility in attending Saul, the current king of Israel. Um, Saul has been told by Samuel, because he disobeyed, that his kingdom would not endure. So he knows that. So hold on to that part. Um, Chapter theme for 17, David, Saul's servant, rids Israel of the disgrace. So we see Goliath defies the ranks of Israel, and they are fearful. So we see that Saul was not leading in the spirit and the he was just fearful, camped out for 40 days. Same thing happened earlier when it was just, under the pomegranate tree, and it was Jonathan that took action. And then he took credit for Jonathan's actions. So here we have David. So Jesse sent David to the battle lines for confirmation about his brother. David here is a champion at the battle line, and the men of Israel fled and were fearful. And then we hear what will be done for the man who rids Israel of the disgrace. So there was like chatter among the ranks of what will be, what will be done for the man who comes up against this person. And we see here, the king will make the man who kills him wealthy with great riches, and will give him his daughter and make his father's house free in Israel. So hold on to that part. We'll give him his daughter. So um, we see Eliab's anger burns against David, and we discussed that kind of things going on. And we see your servant will go and fight, and so we know that David went up against the Philistine. He said that the battle was the Lord's, and we see David slung the stone, and Goliath fell. And that David prevailed over the Philistines. And when Saul saw him going out against the Philistine, he said, "Who is this young man?" He said, "The son of your servant Jesse." So we left off there. So heading into 18. Now, when it came about, when he had finished speaking to Saul, that Jonathan committed himself to David, and Jonathan loved him as himself. And Saul took him that day and did not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David, with his military gear, including his sword, his bow, and his belt. And David went into battle wherever Saul sent him, and always achieved success. So Saul put him in charge of the men of war, and it was pleasing in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. All right, insights into 1 through 5.
So the knitting together is definitely, um, uh, you know, key here with the covenant because they were not something deeper than a friendship. It was, they're definitely divine, when God knits your souls together. That's, yeah.
Yes. So we see a contrast between Jonathan and Saul, which that contrast will come up later. Because right now it's like, okay, Saul's, David's attending him. He made David the, commander of the army or whatever. But it says Jonathan loved him as himself. And so this loved, the word can mean several different things, but you have to go with the context.
Mm.
And I'm going to speak to this because some people say that David and Jonathan had a special relationship.
Oh my goodness.
That is not true.
I
um,
think both had the same heart for God, and that's where the
yeah, and both, yeah. So anyway, there are many definitions to that word. So anybody trying to lead you astray by one definition of the word is doing just that. They are leading you astray. So, but this loved, it can mean many different things. But the connotation is, and I can pull it up here. Um, it's a human love for another. It includes family and it includes sexual, so that's where they get that. Um, it's a human love or to God. It's an act of being a friend, or it's also God's love towards man. So you see the connotation here. It's just a deep love, whether it's friendship or family, or God's love for man. It's a little deeper. Agape love is like man's love for, man, like the well-being of another. um we see as we go along and get more into this Davidic covenant, it's really a love between believers. um Jonathan sees that the Lord is with David. Both Jonathan and David are men after God's own hearts. Jonathan sees the truth. And so here we have Jonathan. So made means cut. Um, and your covenant, it's pretty self-explanatory, but a covenant, a treaty, an alliance, an agreement, a pledge, an oath. And you can see that a covenant can be between men, and it can also be between God and man. So whenever we study covenant, um, we we look at a few covenants between men and men, but we also look at our covenants between God and man. And so I'm like, please don't take a few minutes.
In my notes, I have that, they were both young. They
Mhm.
were men of action. They were, so there was a lot of, sometimes we just meet people that we click with, but above all that, it was their burning love for God that brought them and knitted them together. So it was definitely a divine
Yes.
thing. I mean, and then they had Saul in common, who, Jonathan already, I'm sure, knew how his dad was. And then here's David, who is learning how Saul is. So they have that common bond as well. There was just a lot of bonds that these guys shared, and God just knitted them together. So, that's what I had in my notes.
Yes. It's yes, it's a um it's two believers, two
Mm.
men of God, and Jonathan recognizing this in David, and making a pledge to him. And you brought up something really interesting. Jonathan knows his father.
Yeah. I don't know how he couldn't at this point. So,
Right. So you see in this chart, you have a covenant made. It's to cut. So the phrase to make a covenant is a Hebrew idiom. It's a phrase by definition to cut implies that blood is shed. So a lot of your covenants would involve some type of sacrifice. We do not see that in this one. Um, and in a covenant, there were oaths. Um, a sacrifice is made, therefore blood is shed. Meals are shared. And so we're going to see that with David. You see it later in your lesson where he's eating at the king's table and things like that, and there's signs, or there's an exchange, gifts are exchanged, and there can be other qualifiers. So we see here with Jonathan and David that the basis of this covenant was love. God was with David, and who was Jonathan? Well, he was the king's son. So he is the humanly dominant partner. So in covenant, the lesser cannot go to the greater and make a covenant. That's why man cannot go to God and make a covenant. So whenever you read that book by Jonathan Cahn that says that the early Americans made a covenant with God, it's like, oh my gosh, no, out. Man cannot cut a covenant with God. In covenant, the greater is the one who initiates the covenant. And so we see that here with Jonathan. He's the greater, he's the king's son. He had royalty with all his privileges. He was heir to the throne. He was the possessor of power, wealth, and resources. Who was David? Um, and so we see that he was blessed of God. He was a shepherd boy. He was the son of a servant and anointed to be king, the next king of Israel, because he keeps saying that I'm the son of your servant Jesse. So he was anointed to be the next king of Israel. So that does not mean that Jesse was a servant in the house of Saul. It just means that anyone under Saul was his servant, so to speak. So we see Jonathan gives David his robe, his armor, his sword, his bow, and his belt. So David went out wherever Saul sent him. And so we see common goals and common enemies. So now that Jonathan and David are in covenant together, David sees Saul's enemies as his own enemies because Saul's enemies are Jonathan's enemies. So the robe exchange picture, that is you're taking on the identity of your covenant partner. So you wear his identity, you represent him and possess his identity for yourself. You bear your partner's reputation. You take on his qualities and have responsibility to keep them unmarred by your words and your deeds. And then you obtain all that is your partner's for yourself. The two become one. They're one in heart and mind. They put their needs and desires above your own. Seek for their best. His enemy is your enemy. Desire to please them. His goals are your goals, and all that he owns belongs to you, and all you own now belongs to him. So it's a mutually beneficial partnership. So that is this isn't a light decision. Marriage, anyone? So yeah, this is but Jonathan saw that the Lord was with David. He knew Saul's kingdom was not going to endure. And so he initiated this covenant, and we're going to see later that how this plays out, because he initiated this covenant that his descendant was taken care of whenever the kingdom changed. So um and then you can see in the chart how it's paralleled to the new covenant, the main thing was the exchange of the robe, um the clothing of Christ. So we put on our new self. So all of these things in covenant is a picture that points to Christ. So Jonathan and David are in covenant. Let's see. So paragraph theme: Jonathan cuts a covenant with David. He loves him as himself. And so that phrase in there, he loved him as himself, that is a covenant phrase. The two become one, whereas David's good as Jonathan's utmost importance, as is Jonathan's own good. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. So now it happened as they were coming, when David returned from killing the Philistine, that the women came out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tambourines, with joy, and with other musical instruments. The women sang as they played and said, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. Then Saul became very angry, for this lyric displeased him, and he said, They have given David credit for 10,000s, but to me they have given credit for only thousands. Now what more can he have but the kingdom? And Saul eyed David with suspicion from that day on. Okay, insights into this one.
So I think this is when his whatever spirit that we're going to say God sent really starts to root into his head. So it's like, okay, so you're here to take my place now. And so now the thoughts start to spiral. And this is when Saul kind of goes down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. So yeah, what more can he have but the kingdom?
Ding.
So yeah, I mean, it's not, Samuel anointed David. His brothers were there. Did they talk? Scripture doesn't say. I mean, they could have all been killed if they talked, so then maybe they didn't talk. We see Eliab has like this weird anger towards David. We see Jonathan cutting a covenant with David because obviously he sees something. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's, Jonathan is attuned to the Lord.
Yes. Yeah.
Saul, not so much. So yeah, and I have my definitions there for jealousy and envy. We've gone over those before. Saul didn't like the song. So
David.
yeah. Or David might have been cringing. We don't know. It doesn't say. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so so Saul becomes very angry at the women's lyric. What more can he have but the kingdom? So here we go, 10 through 11. Now it came about on the next day that an evil spirit from God rushed upon Saul, and he raved in the midst of the house while David was playing the harp with his hand, as usual, and a spear was in Saul's hand. And then David hurled the spear, for he thought, I will pin David to the wall. But David escaped from his presence twice. Okay.
Well, he did it more than once,
Yep.
apparently. Wow.
Um, so we have a lot of contrasts here. We have the contrast between Jonathan and Saul. We also have the contrast of God sending the evil spirit on Saul versus the Lord being with David. And even we can say the Lord was Jonathan. So lots of contrast there. And then this goes into he's jealous and envious, both is going on with Saul. That both definitions apply here. And here's David serving Saul by playing the harp and trying to soothe him, and Saul's chunking spears at him. Um,
There's a good contrast right there.
yeah, and yeah, it's just like, oh my goodness. So, and we see the thought, for he thought, I will pin David to the wall. So, like I said, your thinking becomes your choices, and your choices become your actions. Your actions um have results, and then lead to the culture. What culture do we have going on here? um Chaos and pandemonium. Saul has these episodes. They have to call in David to you know
Calm him down, maybe, or try.
right. And then we have spears being chunked everywhere, and
A little
um
violent. Yeah.
yeah. And that James verse, and we're gonna see, it's like, okay, he took credit for what Jonathan did. Jonathan went into the Philistine garrison. Saul took credit for that. And then whenever he oppressed the people, saying don't eat anything, and then they like freaked out, or Jonathan didn't know about it, and so he ate some honey, and then he was just willing to kill off Jonathan, no problem. And um didn't think two shakes about it. It was the people that saved Jonathan by saying, you're not going to kill him. Why would you kill him? He's, won this victory for us. And then and so here we are. Now he's hurling spears at David, who is Jonathan's covenant partner. Notice it wasn't a covenant between Saul and David. It was a covenant between Jonathan and David. Um, so,
But speaking to David, going back
mhm.
on the spear throwing, it's like, I mean, if somebody chunks a spear at you once, do you really want to go back and play the music for him? I mean, just speaking for his heart to, or his true faith in God that he's protected to go back and do it again. I made an asterisk of that. It was like, I don't know
Yeah.
why it kind of came up in my brain, but
Well, and I mean, you said it, like just true faith and reliance on God to know, you know, um, that Samuel's anointing came from God, and that God had a plan for his life, and that Saul chunking a spear at him was not going to end it.
yeah.
Um, same with Goliath, um, that kind of thing. The same God that delivered me from the paw of the bear and the paw of the lion will deliver me from you. Um, Now it
So
would have been pretty interesting of, just watching when to duck, but um,
yeah, it's crazy.
yeah, I mean, I would have definitely been keeping my eye on Saul, but I wouldn't have looked away.
Yeah, no way.
Um, So then we see now Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but had left Saul. So Saul removed from his presence and appointed him as his commander of 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. David was successful in all his ways, for the Lord was with him. When Samuel saw that he was very successful, he was afraid of him. I'm sorry, when Saul saw that he was very successful, he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, for he would go out to battle and return before them. So we see keywords afraid. Um, yes, afraid, afraid. Saul was afraid of David.
So
But
he was,
all, I'm sorry.
yeah. So he was definitely not blessing him by making him a captain of his army. So
No.
that
Uh,
was not, that was
you caught that.
not. Yeah. Okay. Let's see how, I mean, if you're, going down the rabbit hole of a crazy spiral, you're going to think, how can I get rid of this? If my spears aren't working, how about if I send him back out to battle? Even though he tended to forget that Goliath didn't work, but I don't know what's going on in his head right now, but it's not good.
Yeah, so if you remember what will be done for the man, the king will make him rich, he will give him his daughter, yada yada, so on and so forth. David is serving in the army. We don't hear anything about being rewarded with any riches. He's serving Saul by playing the harp for him, and then he puts him in the, as a commander of the army, and not necessarily for good. He's really wanting him to get killed. Um, that's his plan, and we see later that he actually we see Saul's thoughts about this later. Um, so yeah, Saul is afraid of David, but all Israel and Judah love David. So then Saul said to David, "Here is my older daughter Merab, and I will give her to you as a wife. Only be a valiant man for me and fight the Lord's battles." For Saul thought, "My hand shall not be against him, but let the hand of the Philistines be against him." So there you go.
Mhm.
But David said to Saul, "Who am I, and who is my family or my father's family in Israel, that I should be the king's son in law?" So it came about at that time, Merab, Saul's daughter, was to be given to David, that she was given instead to Adriel, the Mahalathite, as a wife. Well, so yes, what will be done for the man who, part of that is he was supposed to get the king's daughter. He offers the king's daughter. We see David's humility. Who am I, and who is my family or my father's family in Israel? The I am the son of your servant Jesse. We see that key repeated. Um, so who am I? David doesn't have the dowry.
Mhm.
Um, but that doesn't really matter because any of the guys out there in the army probably didn't have the dowry. That was the reward for whoever went up against Goliath. And so now we see Saul offering, we see David's humility, but Saul gives her to somebody else.
I don't understand that. I mean, other than the fact that he's just kind of cuckoo at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really know what his thinking is. Scripture doesn't say, we just know that he's not on the up and up.
Yeah, something.
I mean, he offered Merib to David, and it wasn't that David was refusing, it was humility.
Yeah.
And so it's because it says when the time came, meaning when the time had come for David and for Saul to actually give him Merib, he goes and gives him to somebody else because it says instead. So it's just like more and more like Saul's just not, it's not good.
I mean,
Um,
maybe it was David's hesitation. I don't know.
yeah, it's just not, yeah. So
Probably more so Saul's craziness, but we're gonna go.
yeah. So Paragraph theme: Saul's offers Merab his wife in a plot for David to die in battle as payment, and Merab is given to Adriel instead. Um, so now Michelle, Saul's daughter, loved David, and when they informed Saul the thing was pleasing to him, for Saul thought, I will give her to him so that she may become a trap for him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Therefore Saul said to David for a second time, that you may become my son-in-law today. Then Saul commanded his servants, speak to David in secret, saying, behold, the king delights in you, and all his servants love you. Now then become the king's son-in-law. So Saul's servants spoke these words to David, but David said, is it a trivial in your sight to become the king's son-in-law, since I am only a poor man and insignificant? Then Saul's servants reported to him, saying, these are the words David spoke. Saul then said, this is what you shall say to David. The king does not desire any dowry except 100 foreskins of the Philistines to take vengeance on the king's enemies. But Saul plotted to have David fall by the hand of the Philistines. When his servants told David these words, it pleased David to become the king's son-in-law. So before the time had expired, David set out and went, he and his men, and fatally struck 200 men among the Philistines. And then David brought their foreskins, and they presented all 200 of them to the king, so that he might become the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him his daughter Michal as wife. When Saul saw and realized that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him, then Saul was even more afraid of David. So Saul was David's enemy continually.
Mhm.
Well, this has all started out wonderful. Um,
Yeah, he's not letting up, is he?
no. And so we see, yeah, I mean, David was like, he didn't have the dowry for Merab. Saul didn't offer him a way to have to pay a dowry. In this next conversation, whenever so paragraph theme, Saul uses Merab's love for David as a trap for David. He gives him the dowry of 100 Philistine foreskins. David actually gives him 200. Um, um, and that Saul's plot didn't necessarily work out to have David killed by the hand of the Philistines. And granted, it was very common back then for kings to marry off their daughters to whoever for political alliances. I mean, feel sorry for king's daughters. Um, yeah, you just get married to whoever. I'm sure there were some kings that did not see their daughters as property and loved them and orchestrated decent marriages. But yeah, you were pretty much just married off for political alliance. And that was covenant, honestly. What we're looking at here is also covenant. Um, so and that's why. I did put an article in here about Michelle. So we know if you go into Second Samuel, things didn't turn out rather lovely down the road. So she loved David. We're gonna see where she helps him escape. Um, but I don't think we'll get to Second Samuel. So just in case we choose not to study that next. Um, Later on down the road, we see in our lesson today that David has to flee. And he doesn't go back. She doesn't see him for like 20 years, and Saul ends up giving her to somebody else as wife. Even though she's married to David, he ends up marrying her off to somebody else. And whenever David after Saul dies and David is king, he has her taken from her husband's home. And the narrative tells of how the husband follows her and is just crying after her. And then also we know that she despised David in her heart whenever he was dancing before the Lord. And the Lord closed her womb. Um, so didn't end up so well. and I'm kind of this ilk. David, he was a God, I'm sorry, he was a man after God's own heart. And he definitely did have rights to Michelle as his wife. But you can kind of understand her bitterness of him not um coming back for her. She did help him escape, and he just didn't come back. Now, granted, he probably couldn't come back because he would get killed. But whenever he does come back, he has all these other wives, and that's not godly. And then she was with a man that really loved her. Um, and not, we don't really don't know what happened. Scripture doesn't necessarily say, and without studying Second Samuel, but we know that David wasn't perfect. Even though he was a man after God's own heart, he did make some imperfect choices, like multiple wives, and things like that. um so I just kind of have an article on her explaining who she was, and other things in scripture about her. Um, then the commanders of the Philistines went to battle, and it happened as often as they went out that David was more successful than all the servants of Saul. So his name was held in high esteem. Um, so Crux David was more successful than the servants of Saul against the Philistines, and his name was held in high esteem. So 19. Oh, I forgot to do a chapter theme. That's just lovely. So your chapter theme for 18 was Jonathan loves David, but Saul fears him. Um, so now Saul told Jonathan, his son, and all his servants to put David to death. But Jonathan, Saul's son, greatly delighted in David. So Jonathan told David, saying, Saul, my father, is seeking to put you to death. Now, therefore, please be on guard in the morning and stay in a secret place and hide yourself. I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where you are, and I will speak with my father about you. If I find out anything, then I will tell you. Then Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father, and said to him, Do not let the king sin against his servant David, since he has not sinned against you, and since his deeds have been very beneficial to you. For he took his life in his hand and struck the Philistine, and the Lord brought about a great deliverance for all Israel. You saw it and rejoiced. Why then will you sin against innocent blood by putting David to death without a cause? Saul listened to the voice of Jonathan, and Saul vowed, As the Lord lives, he shall not be put to death. Then Jonathan called David, and Jonathan told him all these words, and Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as formerly. All right, insight into this one.
I don't think Saul was happy with what Jonathan had to say. I mean, he really wants David to die. Um, but the covenant between the two, Jonathan is doing his thing and protecting David. So,
Yeah, we see, and this is an example of the voice of the righteous,
mm,
um, speaking the truth in love. I mean, actually, temporarily had an effect where David was restored to Saul. And so that's the paragraph theme is Jonathan restores David to Saul. I mean, we see that there was Jonathan, and he said he listened to Jonathan's voice, the voice of reason. And we see that all the time. You know, I'm sure we've all had times in our lives where we see somebody in sin or thinking the wrong thing, and we have a reasonable conversation with them, a good conversation, a godly conversation, and they agree with us. And they might make claims like Saul, as the Lord lives, he shall
mhm.
not be put to death. Okay. Um, and they make all these claims and things like that, and then just go back to whatever.
Yeah, I don't, it somehow
Yeah.
it doesn't stick,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, but Jonathan, I mean, again, shows his heart for the Lord and able to, we shall not murder, uh, kind of give him the in love, like you said, which is good. I mean, it just it shows more, I think, of Jonathan's heart, to his dad. And then the temporary effect on Saul is good, but he just can't help himself.
Right. Yeah. No, he, yeah. Um, and one thing that we really need to nail down is this evil spirit from the Lord. Um,
That's interesting.
yeah, and so here's the deal. Satan is God's devil. He is a created being as well as those evil spirits. So those evil spirits are the ones that decided to follow Satan in his rebellion against God. But they cannot do anything unless God allows. Just like whenever Satan asked to sift Job, he asked to sift Peter, but God allows that. So what this is a sifting of Saul. Saul made his choices. The Lord um, left Saul, but he also allowed that evil spirit to torture Saul, and Saul could still make a choice. Why did God send that evil spirit or allow that evil spirit to torture Saul? What was the purpose in that? What was the purpose in that judgment? Was it, oh, he sealed Saul's fate?
Teaching, I think it was his disobedience, just his blatant turning, his will, not God's will. I mean, he's not doing what God's asking him to do. So God's like, okay. And then there's the Israel component too of, I don't know if that plays into this where they're wanting a king and they're turning from God too. So I mean, there's a lot of,
Yeah. But the part of this, so okay, yes, you brought that up. Israel asked for a king. So God's judgment on Israel for asking for a king, and Samuel said this will be the procedure of the king.
Mhm.
And he chose Saul. And Saul is not a good leader, and this was the procedure of the king. I mean, we saw that during battle how he oppressed the people and everything like that. So, what is the purpose of judgment? To bring about repentance. This is to bring Saul so low. He's so tortured. It's to get him to repent.
Yeah, like you said, yeah,
But he does
redemption.
he doesn't. He just goes the other way. In fact, we're going to end up with the witch of Endor. So it's like it's just this choice upon choice upon choice upon choice. It's not that God has sealed his fate and it's just like you're toast. We make our choices. It's the doctrine of free will. So we can't go up. We can't violate known doctrine. So that your doctrine of free will, it's your choice. You either listen to God's word or you listen to Satan's word.
You got to turn that ship around, Saul.
Yeah, and well, he just doesn't. But anyway, so but we have this moment, and so this is an example of we have people in our lives that are just off the rails, wrong way, wrong direction, and sometimes you can just have a loving, reasonable conversation and they agree with you and they make vows and then sometimes they just don't follow through with it, and we get hopeful, you know
Yeah.
we think that it's all going to change and it just doesn't. um and that's the case here with Saul. Um so Jonathan restores David to Saul, so everything's back to normal, so to speak. So when there was war again, David went out and fought with the Philistines and defeated them with great slaughter, so that they fled before him. And now there was an evil spirit from the Lord on Saul as he was sitting in his house with a spear in his hand, and David was playing the harp with his hand. Saul tried to pin David to the wall with the spear, but he slipped away out of Saul's presence so that he stuck the spear into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. Um, so he's definitely stuck on this pinning David to the wall thing. So I have my verse 18 through 11. So we say Saul tried to pin David to the wall with a spear, and David fled. Um, then Saul sent messengers to David's house to watch him in order to put him to death in the morning, after he just made a vow, as the Lord lives. So then Saul sent messengers to David's house, watch him in order to put death in the morning. But Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, "If you do not save your life tonight, tomorrow you will be put to death." So Michal let David down through the window, and he went out and fled and escaped. Michal took the household idol and laid it on the bed, and put a quilt of goat's hair at its head, and covered it with clothes. When Saul sent messengers to take David, she said, "He is sick." Then Saul sent messengers to see David, saying, "Bring him up to me on his bed, that I may put him to death." And when the messengers entered, behold, the household idol was on the bed with the quilt of goat's hair at its head. So Saul said to Michal, "Why have you deceived me like this, and let my enemy go, so that he has escaped?" And Michal said to Saul, "He said to me, 'Let me go. Why should I put you to death?'" All right, insights into this.
Mm, um,
This is pretty cool.
I know, I was trying to looking at my notes real quick. There's, well, first of all, kudos to David for listening to his wife. Well, because we'll start with that. Instead of going, "You're a silly woman, I'm not gonna listen to you." So we'll go with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Saul, he's just continuing to spiral down and down. So,
Yeah, he made the vow, he threw the spear, and now it's just on. And
it's like
um
10, now he's going.
yeah. And we have Michelle going against her father. Um, acting against her father, and but honestly, marriage is covenant. It's leave and cleave. So
Yes, yeah, that I had that in my notes too, but also had that, back to God using people. He's protecting David, so
yeah.
he's using his assets to make sure, you know, he's David still has, stuff for David to do.
Yeah.
So
Yes, he has to be. Um, so yes, Michelle is definitely the instrument that helps David escape. And then there is this little part about the household idols.
I
Um,
I had a question mark by that.
yeah.
As a fertility good luck charm, correct?
So is it that Michelle had idols in the house?
Yeah.
Or is it that they were living in one of Saul's houses in the compound? Either way, where did if it was Michelle that brought an idol into the house, where did she get that from?
Uh, so Teraphim, is that? I somehow found that when looking in the looking up the
Oh,
commentary.
mm-hmm.
And it said a figurine used as a household idol as a fertility, a good luck charm. In ancient Israel, teraphim is intended as aids in worshiping the true God. They didn't think of the teraphim as other gods, but as representing the God of Israel. But clearly it was not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do not make an idol.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Learn this. They should have learned this a long time ago.
Right. And so that's interesting because whenever she despised David in her heart in Second Samuel, God closes her womb. And so you doing that research and bringing up that it was an idol or a talisman or so to speak of fertility.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, makes you wonder the connection there.
It's
Maybe
interesting.
mm-mm.
Yep. Interesting. How that played out. So yeah. So David escapes. We see Michelle she did lie to her father as far as she's like she says that David said he was gonna kill her if she didn't let him go, and that's not true. She did deceive by putting the idol and the goat thing and stuff like that, but she also lied straight out about David. Um, so in commentaries, the subject of lying came up. And there's a lot of different things. They went into Rahab and just talked about, God, just because you see something in a narrative and just because something happened that, oh, it was good because David escaped or whatever. It doesn't mean that God is saying lying is okay. Lying is not okay.
Yeah.
um, you know, so, and if I mean, she lied about David. David didn't say he would kill her. She was lying in that instance to protect her own self,
Mhm.
because that could have been seen as treason against the king.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So, yeah.
Then I had something about my enemy where it refers to Saul saying he wanted to kill him, and that David was the only enemy of Saul because Saul wanted to see him that way, and that David had done so much for Saul.
Hmm.
Just but this again goes back to the spirit that's on Saul right now,
Hmm.
causing him to see David this way when I mean this kid's getting spears chunked at him while he's playing the harp. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right. And the other thing of it is Saul is breaking covenant.
Mhm.
Now, so whenever Saul offered David uh Merib and Michelle in marriage, he was offering a covenant contract because that's what they were doing whenever they were those kings. Whenever they would marry off their daughters, they were entering into a covenant with the other king. Now, David didn't come from another king or anything like that, or a tribal leader or anything. But it was a covenant relationship, so those two households joined together in a covenant, and they defended each other and things like that. They were not enemies. So Saul is breaking covenant.
Mhm.
Hmm. Um, not good.
Mm-mm.
All right. So now David fled and escaped and came to Samuel at Ramah and told him all that Saul had done to him. And he and Samuel went and stayed at Naioth. It was told Saul, saying, Behold, David is at Naioth in Ramah. Then Saul sent messengers to take David. But when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying, with Samuel standing and presiding over them, the Spirit of God came upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. When it was told Saul, he sent other messengers, and they also prophesied. So Saul sent messengers again the third time, and they also prophesied. And then he himself went to Ramah and came as far as a large well that is in Seku. And he asked and said, Where are Samuel and David? And someone said, Behold, they are at Naioth and Ramah. He proceeded there to Naioth and Ramah, and the Spirit of God came upon him also, so that he went along prophesying continually until he came to Naioth and Ramah. He also stripped off his clothes, and he too prophesied before Samuel, and lay down naked all day long and all that night. And therefore they say, Is Saul also among the prophets? All right, insights into this one.
Um, I did, 'cause I kind of looked at prophesy because I was thinking, but I did see that that can mean word like worshiping God versus, pouring out or versus, talking of prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he just probably went into a lot of prayer there. And so, and then taking off the royal robes. Yeah, I kind of blinked on this one.
Yeah, it's kind of just I mean, it does seem strange. Like, okay, these people are prophesying, but we have to remember that it's the Spirit of the Lord coming upon them and making them prophesy.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of goes back to Balaam and Numbers, whenever Balak, the king of whatever that place was, he wanted to destroy the Israelites. And so he went to Balaam and he paid him to prophesy against the Israelites. And Balaam couldn't. The Lord wouldn't let him. And the king, like, they went to all these different places and blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff, and this king is like paying him money, and he's just like, I'm sorry, he's like, the Lord won't let me prophesy against the Israelites, but this is what you can do. So we see in this instance, the Lord is putting the Spirit upon these people to prophesy, and therefore thwarting Saul's plan. And the same thing happened to Saul when he came himself. What they were prophesying about, it doesn't say.
Yeah, that's what kind of leaves you.
Hmm. But we see here is the Lord's hand on David and his protection of David, and also through these strange events, it's like the Lord is in control.
100%. So it's like David leaves, he pursues Saul, and then, I mean, Samuel,
Mm-hmm.
and then Saul leaves and pursues Samuel, right?
Um, well,
Or Saul sent messages.
I don't know.
That's kind of where I was trying to, of course, I'm trying to flow chart it in my brain.
Oh, are you talking about just this paragraph?
Yeah, so this paragraph, that we just read, so David actually is with Samuel, correct?
Yeah, so he goes to Samuel. Saul hears that he's with Samuel, so he sends messengers. He sends
Okay.
three
Okay.
different envoys. Each envoy, the Spirit of the Lord, makes him prophesy. And then so Saul goes himself, and the same thing happens to Saul.
Okay, so Saul ends up going, but is David still there when Saul gets there?
Um, it seems like it, yes.
Okay.
Uh, so
And then Jonathan,
yes, in chapter 20.
yeah.
So, and we saw this before where Saul start like whenever Saul was anointed king, um, that was one of the signs, like he would find the people prophesying, and then Saul, Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and Saul prophesied, and they also said, as Saul among the prophets. Um, and so we just see God's sovereignty here.
Hmm.
But then we see Saul, like, so you see, okay, well, the messengers you sent, this happened. But we see Saul's arrogance against God of, oh, well, I'm going to go in there.
Yeah.
It's okay. Well, God's like, okay, well, same thing's going to happen to you. And like, even much worse, he like strips off his royal robe, like, just it goes on for days. And so it's like, okay, Saul, when are you going to be humbled? Um,
And
so,
I mean, there's peaks of him, like, there's peaks of him getting humbled at certain points in time, but he just can't. It's like, it's just a moment, I think a moment, and then he's back to, his prideful, you know, which means he doesn't have the true spirit or the heart of God, basically.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Yes.
trying to carry out his will, get rid of David because he wants to keep, jealousy. What is it where he wants to keep it? Not
Mm-hmm.
it, but jealousy. He wants to keep he knows that, it's being threatened that he's going to lose.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's, yeah. I think chapter theme for this one would be David flees Saul. Um would be the short stack. I mean, you could put something in there about Saul. How about Saul orders David's death and David flees Saul. That
Yeah.
would be a good chapter theme. Um so 20. Then David fled from Naoth and Ramah and came and said to Jonathan, "What have I done? What is my iniquity? And what is my sin before your father that he is seeking my life?" And he said to him, "Far from it. You shall not die. Behold, my father does nothing either great or small without disclosing it to me. So why should my father hide this thing from me? It is not so." Yet David vowed again, saying, "Your father knows well that I have found favor in your sight, and he has said, 'Do not let Jonathan know this, or he will be grieved.' But truly, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, there is hardly a step between me and death." Then Jonathan said to David, "Whatever you say, I will do for you." So David said to Jonathan, "Behold, tomorrow is a new moon, and I ought to sit down to eat with the king. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field until the third evening. If your father misses me at all, then say David earnestly asked to leave of me to run to Bethlehem, his city, because it is the yearly sacrifice there for the whole family. If he says it is good, your servant will be safe. But if he is very angry, know that he has decided on evil. Therefore, deal kindly with your servant, for you have brought your servant into a covenant of the Lord with you. But if there is iniquity in me, put me to death yourself. For why then should you bring me to your father?" Jonathan said, "Far be it from you, for if I should indeed learn that evil has been decided by my father to come upon you, then would I not tell you about it?" Then David said to Jonathan, "Who will tell me if your father answers you harshly?" Jonathan said to David, "Come and let us go out into the field." So both of them went out into the field. All right, insights into 1 through 11.
Oh, goodness. Um, yeah, I mean, basically, I think David is just a little leery of, I think Saul's kind of spiraled so far down now that David's a little leery of believing that Saul's going to tell Jonathan anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's lots of things going on here. First of all, David is humble enough to say, "What have I done?
Yeah.
You know, what have I done? If I have done something, put me to death yourself. If I have done something, put me to death yourself, because that is a consequence of breaking covenant. So if I've done something against your father Saul, because I am in covenant with you, and as your covenant partner, your interest or my interest, if I have sinned against your father Saul, you put me to death yourself.
Mhm.
What have I done? Is there something I don't know about?" So we see that humility in David.
Yes. Like in
Mhm.
my life.
Yes. And I mean, honestly, that should be our first question whenever somebody's upset with us. What have I done? Have I done something?
Yeah.
Like maybe
And
there's
if
something I'm not aware of.
right, no, totally. Yeah, and if I have, let me try to make it right. So yeah, and then I think he's a little concerned about how he's supposed to get the message because it's like, how are you going to send me a message if I yeah, it's I think David's just, I think yeah, he's fully aware now that he's on a mission and Saul's going to try to kill him. So I think he just is, this is just more of him being fully aware. I don't think he has any distrust against Jonathan though.
No, no. And he reminds him of the covenant too.
Yeah, he
You
does.
brought me into this covenant. Um, so yeah. But we see Jonathan, we see this thing, okay. It's like he's like, I'm not gonna, you know, he's like, whatever you say, I will do it for you. Like he's keeping his end of the covenant. Um,
So
so
is he referring to, because he says the covenant of the Lord, but if it's the David covenant, it wouldn't be the covenant of the Lord, correct?
well, it's a covenant of the Lord, and we're gonna get to this. Okay. So they were making a covenant before the Lord because they are I'm going to say brothers in the Lord. We usually say brothers in Christ, but they are both believers, and the Lord is the watcher of the covenant.
Okay, got it.
So there is let me go down here. So it's in Genesis 31, where it's in 44 through 54, where it's Laban and Jacob. They're making a covenant and says, so now come, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. Then Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. So that's the sign of the covenant. And Jacob said to his kinsmen, gather stones. So they took stones and made a heap. And they ate there by the heap. That's the covenant meal. Now Laban called it Jagar Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Gilead. Laban said, this heap is witness between you and me this day. Therefore, it is named Galeb and Mitzvah. For he said, may the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent for one another.
Perfect. Yes. Now, wasn't there one with the at a well as well with
Uh-huh.
um not Esau, but there was another one at a well that was made. Was it with Abraham or was it with Isaac?
And that might have been Isaac and Abimelech.
Yes, yes, that was it. When they were when he was afraid of the God, God. So he made the covenant because he didn't want to yeah, he wanted peace. He knew he didn't want to deal, he didn't want to mess with that.
Yeah.
Mess with God's people. He's like, let's just make this covenant now.
Yeah. So
Wife was portraying as the sister, and yes, okay.
yeah. So yeah. So this is why he says that. It's a covenant of the Lord, because the Lord, whenever they're apart from each other, the Lord is the watcher of the covenant. And what's really funny is I just read that to you in Genesis, and I saw that on a little sign at Hobby Lobby, and that verse, and I thought, oh, that's so, I'm thinking, oh, that's so nice. This is like kind of like in my early years before I really knew anything. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet. I put it by the back door so, we could all see it when we went out the door to go about our daily business, thinking more of it was like a verse of, God watching over us while we're away from each other.
Mhm.
I found out different, and I was like, ooh, this is good. Um, so what it really means is, so the consequence of breaking covenant is death.
Oh goodness.
That covenant partner has the right to put you to death if you break covenant. That's why marriage covenant is only broken upon death or adultery. Um, I mean, there's other parts to the covenant contract as well. I'm not going to leave out abuse. You have the right to divorce for abuse, but there's other parts to the covenant contract.
Yeah.
It's just what we're defining as abuse these days.
Yeah.
So,
Amen.
yeah. So that is why those things are there. So it's may the Lord watch between me and you. In other words, you break this covenant,
Mm-hmm.
may the Lord put you to death.
Yeah. Yeah, not gonna go well for you.
Yeah, so I'm like, I hung that sign. um, that's funny. So anyway, um, so yeah, so this is a covenant of the Lord, and we're gonna see when we get down. I'm gonna bring in Jonathan's son here in a minute. So then Jonathan said to David, the Lord of the God of Israel be witness. When I have sounded out my father about this time tomorrow or the third day, behold, if there is good feeling toward David, shall I not then send you and make it known to you? If it please my father to do you harm, may the Lord do so to Jonathan and more also, if I do not make it known to you and send you away that you may go in safety. And may the Lord be with you as he has been with my father. If I am still alive, will you not show me the loving kindness of the Lord that I may not die? You shall not cut off your loving kindness from my house forever, not even when the Lord cuts off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, may the Lord require it at the hands of David's enemies. Jonathan made David vow again because of his love for him, because he loved him as he loved his own life. So now we have a covenant contract in place.
Mm-hmm.
And so how this plays out is with Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son. So Jonathan, so okay, Saul knows he's been told by Samuel, your kingdom should not endure. I would, I think it would. This was probably a public proclamation, um, because it's like Saul sitting there with sheep bleating and all that kind of stuff. But here we have Saul's kingdom is not going to endure. Jonathan is probably seeing this. And Jonathan is so humble that he knows, like, he's not going to have the kingship.
Mm-hmm.
But he's humble enough to bow to the Lord's anointed, to cut a covenant with him while he's actually in power. He could be David's enemy, but he's not. He bows his knee to the Lord. He makes this covenant with David. But part of this covenant contract is that, hey, when all of your enemies are dead, including my father, that you don't cut off my house. So here we go.
Yeah, because he could definitely try to manipulate it to keep Saul alive, knowing that he would take over as king, but he's not. He's honoring God's wishes.
Right. So, um, so there are two men, both in Second Samuel. The less prominent was the one was a son of King Saul. He was delivered to David, to the Gibeonites to be hanged in retaliation for Saul's earlier slaughter of a band of Gibeonites. The other Mephibosheth was the son of Jonathan, who was a son of King Saul and special friend of King David. When he was 5 years old, his father Jonathan was killed in battle. Fearing that the Philistines would seek to take the life of the young boy, a nurse fled with him to Gibeah, the royal residence. But in her haste, she dropped him, and both his feet were crippled. He was carried to the land of Gilead, where he found refuge in the house of Michar, house of Amiel at Lo Debar. Some years later, when King David had conquered all of Israel's enemies, he remembered the family of his friend Jonathan, and wishing to display his loving loyalty to Jonathan by ministering to his family, David found out that Mephibosheth was residing in the house of Michar. So he sent royal messengers there, and he brought Mephibosheth and his infant son Micah to Jerusalem, where they resided from that point on. Later, when David invited the young boy to be part of his court, he entrusted the family property to a steward, Ziba, during Absalom's rebellion. Ziba tried unsuccessfully to turn David against Mephibosheth, but upon the king's return to Jerusalem, Mephibosheth vindicated himself and was allowed to remain in the king's house.
Interesting.
Beautiful, beautiful covenant keeping story.
Okay, the son of Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he was
Yes,
the one that was crippled.
he was crippled, and yes, and
Okay,
David went and got him and brought him into his house, and he would eat at the king's table.
perfect. Yeah, covenant keeping for sure. Taking care.
Yes,
That's amazing.
it's beautiful story.
Mhm.
Um, so you shall not cut off your love and kindness from a house forever when the Lord cuts off the enemies of David. So there's a lot of things. I mean, will probably be, that are coming, that will come out of Second Samuel, that we'll bring up. But um, Michelle and Jonathan's son are two of them that you see kind of the fulfillment of what happens there. Um, So then Jonathan said to him, tomorrow is a new moon, and you will be missed because your seat will be empty. When you have stayed for 3 days, you shall go down quickly and come to the place where you hid yourself on this eventful day, and you shall remain by the stone of Azel. I will shoot 3 arrows to the side as though I shot at a target, and behold, I will send the lad, saying, go find the arrows. If I specifically say to the lad, behold, the arrows are on the side of you, get them, then come, for there is safety for you, and no harm, as the Lord lives. But if I say to the youth, behold, the arrows are beyond you, go, for the Lord has sent you away. As for the agreement of which you and I have spoken, behold, the Lord is between you and me forever. And so that's where I put that Genesis 31 passage. Um,
Perfect.
yep. So it's the Lord that is watching.
Mhm.
Yep. So I just put, as far as the agreement, the Lord is between you and thee forever. Um, So David hid in the field and went when the new moon came, and the king sat down to eat food, and the king sat on his seat as usual, the seat by the wall, and then Jonathan rose up and Abner sat down by Saul's side, but David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul did not speak anything that day, for he thought, it is an accident. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean. It came about the next day, the second day of the new moon, that David's place was empty. So Saul said to Jonathan his son, why has the son of Jesse not come to the meal either yesterday or today? And Jonathan then answered Saul, David earnestly asked to leave of me to go to Bethlehem, for he said, please let me go, since our family has a sacrifice in the city and my brother has commanded me to attend. And now, if I have found favor in your sight, please let me go away that I may see my brothers. For this reason, he has not come to the king's table. So any insight into this one?
Um, no. I mean, it's just Jonathan is doing his thing.
Yeah.
Um, it's gonna be interesting to kind of see how Saul goes, I mean, which we know, but
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing is just him saying the son of Jesse. It's kind of more of a lowly term
oh, okay.
instead of addressing him as David. Um, David's his son-in-law, and David is, commander in his army, and he's no longer just the son of Jesse and his servant. So, just kind of a little there. Um,
Twist. He's keeping him in his place.
yeah. So 30 through 35. Then Saul's anger burned against Jonathan, and he said to him, you son of a perverse, rebellious woman, do I not know that you are choosing the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives on the earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. Therefore, now send and bring him to me, for he must surely die. But Jonathan answered Saul his father and said to him, why should he be put to death? What has he done? And Saul hurled a spear at him to strike him down. So Jonathan knew that his father had decided to put David to death. Then Jonathan arose from the table in fierce anger and did not eat food on the second day. of the new moon, for he was grieved over David because his father had dishonored him.
Yeah, I think Jonathan's seeing the light.
Yes.
Maybe,
Um,
maybe he was a little, biased or trying to stick up for his dad, but but I think now he's realizing.
yeah, I mean, and it's kind of, I mean, honestly, I think it kind of happens in these situations where you have a situation, somebody's going awry, you have a conversation with them that you think is reasonable, and then they make a promise, and then it's like, and you want to think the best of them.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and give him the benefit of the doubt.
right, and Saul hasn't always been on the up and up as with Jonathan,
Mm-mm.
as far as Jonathan's concerned, but now it's really off the rails. He calls her the son of a perverse and rebellious woman. It's like, okay, what's that about?
I don't,
Um,
yeah. I was looking in my notes to see if I had anything on that.
yeah. So and and now the cat is really out of the bag. Do I not know that you are choosing the son of Jesse to your own shame and the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives on the earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established.
Goodness.
Yep. So it's like, okay, now we know that he knows. It's all out there. Um,
Yes. And this makes David a fugitive at this point. Now David is cannot. Now he's done. I mean, basically, yeah.
yeah,
David.
no, it's on. It's
Yeah.
on, and now we have all the Psalms. Uh,
Yeah.
um, so I did put Psalm 57 in my notes for the lesson. She pointed that out. And yes, there are all these Psalms of when Saul was just chasing David around, which we're going to get to. Um, but we see Saul is just really like there's huge contrast between Saul and Jonathan. Um, and Saul is just really off the rails, like with everyone. Um, he's off the rails with Jonathan. He promises Merab, he marries, her off to somebody else. But and then he uses Michelle. And then how he just treats Jonathan at the banquet in front of everybody, and the things that he says about his wife, and he
Not rational.
no, I mean it's just like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, something's going on.
Uh, yeah.
I don't think Prozac could even help that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, repentance maybe, but
Maybe. Yep.
yeah. So we see Jonathan grieved over David because his father has dishonored him. Um, so it wasn't Jonathan, he just dishonored Jonathan, but he
Yeah.
was more worried about him dishonoring David, the Lord's anointed,
Yeah.
um, and his covenant partner. So so we just see, I mean, really righteous, right thinking here. Um, Now it came about in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field for the appointment with David, and a little lad was with him. And they said to the lad, "Run, find now the arrows which I'm about to shoot." And the lad was running, and he shot an arrow past him. And when the lad reached the place of the arrow which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan called after the lad and said, "Is not the arrow beyond you?" And Jonathan called after the lad, "Hurry, be quick, do not stay." And Jonathan's lad picked up the arrow and came to his master, but the lad was not aware of anything. Only Jonathan and David knew about the matter. Then Jonathan, um, oh, of course I would mess it up. Then Jonathan gave his weapons to his lad and said to him, "Go, bring them to the city." And when the lad was gone, David rose from the south side and fell on his face to the ground and bowed 3 times. And they kissed each other and wept together. But David wept the more. Jonathan
Oh,
said to David, Go in safety, inasmuch as we have sworn to each other in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord will be between me and you, and between my descendants and your descendants forever. And then he rose and departed, while Jonathan went into the city. So, yeah. So Jonathan kept his part of the covenant. He let David know. And then we see this weeping. And then the statement again of the covenant contract. So we know that Jonathan is going to continue to protect David. Um,
Mm.
even though we know Saul's going to chase David everywhere. And then we also know that David's going to keep that covenant with Jonathan because we've read the Bible.
Yeah. It's amazing how that works.
Yeah, and so paragraph theme: go in safety. The Lord will be between me and you, between my descendants and your descendants forever. Um, so I think a good chapter theme for this would be um the Lord is between me and you forever, or the Lord is between David and Jonathan forever. Something to that effect. Or go in safety. The Lord is between me and you forever. That could be one as well.
Right.
So,
Just definitely, this is what a covenant looks like. And then, I mean, you have I mean, I think the covenant is so strong that even the fact that some of these things are not, you've got a little bit of the lie thing in here, but um, I mean, I don't think it's a huge deal just simply because of it's protecting what the covenant's protecting. Does that make sense?
mhm,
Am I saying that right?
yeah, I mean,
You
that's,
some dishonesty going on, but it's the battle of good and evil. I mean, it's because you're trying to protect the good because the dishonesty is with the evil because there's obviously some kind of whatever spirit is on Saul is evil. You know.
yes, yes. So, I mean, this is not condoning lying in
Mm-mm.
uh, in any sense of the word. So, there was also Rahab. She lied to she hid the spies and she lied and said, oh,
Yeah.
but I mean, the Lord does not condone lying, but we do it whenever, I mean, we do it. But I mean, yeah, we have those situations where we're trying to protect somebody and we do it. Um,
Mhm.
should we confess it? Sure. I mean,
Yeah. Even though he knows your heart, again, I could think it goes back to your heart. I mean, are you lying to deceive or are you lying, even though it doesn't mean a practice you should do.
right.
Um, certainly not like you said, condoning it, but I think it's
Yes.
done in God's, protection because they're, trying to save David and again back to the covenant and the heart. And so I think it's
And then also, let's not twist this into lying to protect ourselves.
right.
But in this instance, Jonathan lied to his father to protect David, and Michelle did the same thing.
Yes.
So Rahab lied to protect the spies.
Yeah.
So this is just because people did it does not mean God condones it, but it's part of the narrative. It's what happened, and you know, it's not an excuse. So
Mhm.
um,
But it was needed.
yeah,
I mean,
I
so
mean, yeah, I mean, we could get to heaven and God could be like, well, I kind of had another plan for that, but um, but
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it, sometimes we get in these situations, but here we are, we have this huge covenant in place, um, where, I mean, this is just, I mean, gosh, this is just so sad. They kissed each other and wept together, but David wept the more. I mean, can you imagine what he is facing?
No, no, this poor guy was just like out tending his sheep, minding his own business.
Like,
I mean, not too long ago, he was just like in his happy place. And then God's like, that's it. Just then another thing, it goes to show you how God uses the people he chooses to use are, not the firstborn or not the this or that. Sometimes he goes to the shepherd boy. It's like,
mhm.
again, back to the heart. I mean,
Yes, he uses the weak to shame the strong and the foolish to confound the wise. And I mean, David's a man after God's own heart, but it speaks to what God has called you to is not going to be easy, and
mm-mm.
you will have warfare.
Mhm. Yeah.
You will have warfare. They will hate you because they hated God first.
The spiritual warfare is unbelievable.
Yes, and if you can imagine the whole army of Israel after you. This is a this and we see David picks up guys. Like this is a like this is craziness. I mean, this is like unrest in Israel now because the people are going to defect from Saul and go to David and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, the heaviness of not only leaving your friend, but you're just on your own with the whole army, with the king of Israel after you.
Hmm. Yep.
But not only that, you're just alone.
And
You
you're like, I don't even know why. Like he's saying, you
like
know, think
right. It's like, what
I think
have I done?
he's gonna figure it out. I mean, as he becomes wiser and realizes his purpose with God, he's gonna see it, but it's kind of hard to see it in a moment, I would think. Maybe it's especially
Right.
faith.
Yeah, because it's like, well, David, you're a threat because you're anointed the next king of Israel. But, you know, in David, from David's perspective, he's done nothing but be respectful to Saul.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%.
And so there's a little, he's just operating from his own, kind of worldview and how he operates. And it's just kind of, we kind of do the same thing. And, people come at us out of left field and we don't understand it because it's not how we would operate. Uh,
Right.
there's just so much here. Not only is he fleeing, he's fleeing for his life, he's leaving his wife behind and this friend. And I mean, it's just this really sad moment.
Yeah, and in that I've looked at it when times when friends and I have gone separate ways and it's been hard to understand. Certainly not in these circumstances. But I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes you have to, then I just, down the road, I reflect and it's like this had to be this way, for God's, you know, this is what needed to happen for God to do what he needed to do. And, you know, in my instance, it's like it's sad, but then it's like, it's friends that are going down different paths than what you need to be going down. And so sometimes you have that divide
Hmm.
because it's, they're holding you back or you're not, walking in God or you're not learning, whatever it is. So
Uh-huh.
so I mean and it's sad and it hurts and it's painful. So I mean I can just see, David's pain. I mean you can amplify probably what you felt a millionfold and see how his pain and his fear and all of the things are
Right.
happening here. So, but this is what had to be.
Yeah, Saul is Saul's hatred for him is forcing him
Mhm.
away from all that he knows, all that he loves. He's on the, he's now on the run.
Got to prepare him for his next step in life or whatever direction, or or keep him alive. We'll go with that.
Right.
Be good.
So,
But yeah, it makes your heart heavy
yeah.
thinking about.
Yeah. And so then, I mean, you can kind of understand like here we have the setup for the Psalms.
Yeah.
And whenever you read the Psalms, and I don't know how many more she's going to bring in, but David, because I'm not going to lie, I go to the Psalms a lot because of stuff in my life. And it's
I
you
just
know,
or-
I'm sorry.
I just ordered the precept psalms. I just got them, so
Yeah.
just to have them to go through.
Right. But I mean, like David, he's like, when this person was sick, I, like, I mean, you can just yeah, it's just this really kind of sad and bad
Mm,
moment, but just that, the Lord will be between me and you and between my descendants and your descendants forever in that piece of how this played out
mhm,
is just, and that is covenant. And so we have this picture here. um the Lord does not break his covenant.
mm-mm.
People will break their covenant, but the Lord will not. So yeah, pretty amazing stuff. So I'm gonna stop.
That- That's real good.